Absolutely. Sister Bayanne, just to let you know that we are streaming live on
Okay.
our official Facebook page right now. It is 4:01. So, and we have 32 participants already here, inshallah. I think it's a good time to get started.
Perfect.
If everybody's ready. All right, Salwa, take it away.
All right, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. My name is Salwa Sarwar, and I'm the Student Council President here at QCA. QCA is one of the two only all-girls Islamic schools nationwide, serving grades 5 through 12. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to this special event, The Impact of Social Media on Mental Health, hosted by QCA in partnership with Young Muslim Sisters of Dallas. Our special thanks to MCCHS in helping us organize this event today. And before we introduce our special guest, we'll open the event with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Aisha Abdullah. Aisha is the co-lead of our Community Service Committee, which organizes different volunteering events for the students here at QCA. Just yesterday, actually, we had a couple of our girls volunteer at the Epic Masjid Food Pantry. All right, Aisha, you can go ahead and begin.
Assalamu alaikum, and I'm going to be reading a few verses. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم جزاكم الله خيرا.
Jazakallah khair, Aisha, for the beautiful recitation. Introducing our speaker here today, we have Yusra Havildar. Yusra is the co-lead for the Journalist Club at QCA, which is responsible for setting out monthly newsletters to keep our school community informed. Take it away, Yusra.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much, Salwa, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming. So Sr Bayanne is a counseling practicum student with the Muslim Community Center for Human Services. She previously earned her bachelor's in psychology and is currently in a master's program for mental health counseling. Sr Bayanne has 10 years of experience working in both the K-12 system as well as with undergrad students. Her passion is to help diversify the field of psychology and provide Muslim families with the counseling opportunities that better align with their backgrounds and their concerns. Sr Bayanne is currently seeing individuals as well as families for counseling and provides psychoeducational programming with the Muslim Community Center for Human Services. We thank the YM Sisters for their help in bringing this program to you and Sr Bayanne from MCCHS. So we'll be posting questions in the chat. You may post your questions in the chat box and we'll be answering them throughout the program. And Aisha Abdullah will be moderating the questions and presenting them to Sr Bayanne. If you wish to send questions anonymously, you can private message them to Aisha as well. So once again, we thank Sr Bayanne for coming and to share her insight, and we welcome her to the speak.
Jazakallah khair, Yusra, and everybody, thank you for such a warm welcome, and thank you for having me. I think we can just jump right in. So today we're going to be talking about social media and how it affects your mental health. I'm going to keep it kind of casual. I'd love to get questions from you guys and hear some feedback. We're going to start off with talking about how social media works. So this is something I had to learn as somebody who had used social media for years. I'm a millennial, so I grew up without social media, and then it became a hot thing, and we made all these profiles, and we really didn't know the consequences or how it worked. It was just a free, fun way to connect. And so what I have learned more recently is that the way social media works is that we are actually the product. So although we are consuming a platform that connects us to the rest of the world and our friends and our family, what is actually happening is the people who host this platform are collecting our data and our behavior patterns, and they're also influencing us. So if you guys will think about, if you get on social media and you see these ads and these interactive things are ways for them to suggest things to us and see if we are willing to click on it or interact with it. And as we do, and as our usage increases, they're collecting this information and using it to market to us. This is essentially the baseline of how social media works. So if you think about it, and I know, gambling is haram, we're not talking about that, but this is the best example I could think of. If you look at a gambling slot machine, people go, they sit in front of a machine, they put a coin in, they press down on a lever, and there's a jackpot of however much money they could win. Now, if they knew that every single time they sat on the machine, they were going to lose, nobody would play. But the way that this works and why it's so addicting is that it runs on a variable reward, meaning that sometimes they lose, sometimes they win small, and sometimes they win big. Well, gambling machines are also run on an algorithm. So that's pretty addicting to the human mind of like, maybe I can put in 5 cents and win $1 million, or maybe I'm going to put in 5 cents and not win anything, but it's a small loss. And over time, our brains just get so conditioned to want this reward. Well, that's how social media works too, because we post a picture and we're thinking, oh, I wonder who's going to like my picture, who's going to comment, who's going to share, how many views it's going to get if I put a story up. And that is actually rewarding to our brain. It releases the same hormone, dopamine, that you would get if you worked out or hugged somebody you love or ate sugar, right? Those are all things that light up the same parts of our brain. And so social media, in a way, changes our physiological bodies. And I'm sure your parents have probably said, just put it down. Well, it's not that easy because it actually rewards us mentally, and it's really hard to do that. Something else that I want to mention about the social media experience as a whole is that it is tailored. So this algorithm that we talked about and collecting all this data about you gives them so much insight to who you are as a person. What Bayanne likes may be very different than what Aisha likes or what Salwa likes, right? And they are tailoring this. So every time you search for something, every time you view something, they are just fine-tuning this algorithm for you. So the reason I want you to know that and keep that in mind is that it's not reality, right? Social media is not real. It's a world that exists on a cloud platform that is tailored to you. So if you're looking up things that make you sad, they're going to keep suggesting things that make you sad. And if you're looking at things that make you happy, they may or may not keep suggesting that. And they're going to mix a couple of things in to see how well you respond. So that is just something that I wanted you guys to keep in mind as we talk about this, because it's really easy to start thinking that social media is real, right? So two of the biggest things when we talk about social media and mental health that come up are anxiety and depression. So I wanted to touch on those before we move forward. So anxiety comes in two forms when we talk about social media. The first form is the fear of missing out, or what we call FOMO. And the reason for that is because it's a 24-hour world. Things are being posted, things are being shared at all times. Like, this platform does not go to sleep. And as humans, we're wondering, like, I wonder what my friends posted. I wonder, what's going on with so-and-so, or what if I missed something? And so we're constantly trying to stay updated, which means that we're constantly online. And if we're prioritizing these things, it can actually make us feel worse than better, because it's not as emotionally rewarding if you're constantly looking at these things. And we're constantly operating under that fear of, like, what if I miss something? I was really surprised. I actually had a talk with someone this weekend, and they were telling me that there are some people who wake up in the middle of the night to check their phone in case they got a message and they missed it. So that's one form of anxiety that we may experience. The other form is the actual anxiety from consuming the content. So the nature of the content tends to yield for us to compare ourselves to others. You see somebody getting flowers and you're like, why didn't I get flowers? Or you see somebody post a beautiful picture, like, wow, mashallah, she's really beautiful. I don't think I look like that. And you're constantly comparing. And they want us to compare, right? Because the more we compare, the more we use, and the more we're willing to purchase things to make us seemingly happy. And that's the way that the platform works. And so it's interesting that they actually did a study and they found that people that are just your general acquaintances actually create more negative feelings for you on social media than your friends and family. And the reason for that is, if you think about it, most people, if not all people, are posting the highlights of their life, the positive things, the pictures where they look the best, the moments in which they seem so happy. Nobody's posting, oh, their bad test grade or how hard they had to study or that fight with their sibling or, whatever is going on, right? And so when it comes to family and friends, we know their hardships. We know that their life is not perfect. And so we understand that when they post a happy picture, it's a snapshot in time. But our acquaintances, we actually have less context about their lives than, we would family and friends. So we are likely to assume that whatever is happening in their life is positive, and whatever is happening in our life is either a mix of positive and negative, or is negative, depending on our intrusive thoughts and things that our brain tells us about our experience versus their experience. In fact, 1 in 4 or 25% of teens say that social media has affected them negatively. And we will go into some of the ways that social media can affect negatively, I believe, as a specific part of that report, but that's a big percentage. That means that if you've noticed that, some of your peers have too. So that's anxiety. If we were to flip the switch and look at depression, that's a different experience, or you can also experience both together. And the reason why I'm not saying social media causes anxiety and depression is because we don't really have any scientific proof that it does. We do have correlations. For example, we know that smartphones were developed in 2007. Between 2007 and 2015, 92% of teens had smartphones. And if we were to look at the graph between smartphone usage and anxiety, depression, and suicide rates, we would see that they actually all have the same trend upwards. So we can't say for sure that it causes it, but it's highly correlated. So depression, some of the reasons why, or some of the things that are correlated with depression and social media have to do with the fact that social media is a roller coaster experience. So as you're scrolling, or I like to call them scroll sessions, if you're having a scroll session, you may notice that you're looking at a cute dog video and then you see like a war happening across the world. And then you're looking and it's a cat video. And then you're seeing your friend who posts this beautiful picture and you're like, I kind of want to, I wish I looked like that. Or then you're seeing somebody who's talking about their fitness, and that may, trigger something else. And then you see somebody talking about poverty. And so as you can see, just in those small examples, you go from like up, down, and it's variable. You don't know what's coming next. And that's part of the allure, is that you don't know what's coming next, but it takes a toll on our energy and on our mental health and on our emotions to constantly go from happy and sad so quickly. So that's one reason that depression and anxiety play a role. The other is that on common sense, we don't move enough. We have less physical activity today. And I know it's like the world of COVID, but even before, on average, teenagers will use some form of media for 7.5 hours daily. That's almost a full-time job, you guys. So what that means is, let's just think about our world today. You guys go to school, whether it's in person or in Zoom, and you're sitting for approximately 8-ish hours. And then you go home and you spend more time on social media, and you're sitting and you're doing homework, and you're sitting and you're watching TV with family, and you're sitting and you're eating, and we're really just not moving enough for our bodies and for our mental health. So that's one reason why social media could just encourage a more sedentary lifestyle. The other is sleep deprivation. These are some things that may not commonly come up as we talk about depression in social media, but the fact that if people who scroll for 1 hour before bed typically lose an hour of sleep. That could be because they've spent sleep time scrolling. It could be because the blue light interferes with the way that our brain processes, and it prevents us from falling asleep, or it actually, I'm going to say, interferes with the way we fall asleep. And then scrolling can cause stress. So think about that roller coaster I talked about. You're scrolling before bed, and then you put your phone down. Well, you have to process all of that. You're not going to just like knock out, right? It's not soothing material. You may have come across something upsetting or triggering or funny, and you want to share it. And so it really doesn't put you to sleep, right? And so that's another reason. The other reason is that with connecting via social media, we have less meaningful connections, right? Usually they're not emotionally based. You're not actually making deep connections with people. If you think about the people that you know generally through social media, you may not have a good rapport of communication with them, although it seems that you are connected because maybe you like each other's photos or you make comment now and again. It's very different than if you think about the relationship you have with your best friend, right? You share things with your best friend, it's emotionally satisfying. And so while it seems like we're more connected, we're actually less satisfied. And the other reason, and probably a big reason, would be that we're creating a facade, right? We're posting all this perfection, and it can kind of seem like imposter syndrome if someone finds out that that's not really your life, and we're afraid of being rejected. So those are some negative emotions that may be tied with using social media heavily. All right, so let's see. Do we have any questions about that part that we can get to before I move forward?
There is one. It says, how do I actually get myself to apply this in my life and break away? Or is there something like social media addiction?
Ooh, there is. We're actually going to get to it. So let me save this question. Aisha, hold on to it, and I'm going to ask you to reread it to me, okay? This is actually, it's a good question. All right. So the next part of the way that social media affects us has to do with body image. And I think this is probably something that more people realize than not. But again, we tend to compare ourselves without consciously understanding that the images that we're viewing are fake images. 71% of people refuse to post unless there's a filter, unless there's some type of editing. So think about, you have people who have eyelash extensions, hair extensions. They're posing in a certain way. They Photoshop the picture, they upload it, then they attach a filter. And we look at it and we just assume like, oh my gosh, mashallah, she woke up like that. Why we do that, I don't know, but it's not real, right? We think about these things as if this is hard truth, but we're not considering that a lot of these influencers are hiring hair, makeup, professional photographers. These things are all curated. They're not real, but we tend to still hold ourselves to that standard. I don't know if you guys have paid attention, but something that's new and upcoming is presets. People have these pre-made filters or photo corrections, and they actually sell them to users, and you can take a picture, maybe it's too dark or part of it's not good or whatever, and you just put this preset on it, and all of a sudden you have a picture similar to what they use. And so this is another way that they play on our insecurities while we play on comparing ourselves. So they did this study that I found was really interesting, you guys. They took a group of women, they split them in two, and they asked them to rate themselves. How do you feel about yourself? They asked them. And they took that score, and then they asked one half of those women to now post a picture of themselves on a platform, their social media platform. One group could not use any filter and could only take one photo, so no redos. The other group had unlimited filters, unlimited trials before they could post the picture. But ironically, both groups of women reported having worse feelings about themselves after posting the selfie. And some people, before even responding to how they feel about themselves, actually wanted to know what the comments were on the picture, because they assessed their value and their beauty and their self-worth based on what how other people responded to them. And part of that is because we're focused so much on the image and on how we appear. And yes, you could argue social media has its positives. I'm not going to deny. There are people who have found their community, like the Lucky Fin Project, for people who are born with limb differences. They can connect with other people that may share their difference that they wouldn't otherwise find around themselves, right? Or within their community. And yes, it is positive. However, most of us are not having that super positive experience. Most of us are having a mixed or a more negative experience from the feedback I've gotten. So there's that. The other part is it's affecting teenagers so much so that so many of them are actually thinking about and consulting doctors to get plastic surgery to look like themselves with a filter. So you have people younger and younger using Botox, getting work done, and again, posting photos, and then we're comparing because we're not thinking of doing that maybe, or we're not understanding that they're doing that. So that brings us to cyberbullying. And let me check in with Aisha. Any questions on body image?
No.
Okay, good. I'll keep talking. All right. So cyberbullying is something that unfortunately 1 in 6 teens have experienced at least one type of cyberbullying. So these can include name calling, spreading false rumors, having unsolicited images of them being posted, having somebody track them without, like, not your parents, but having somebody just like know where you are or follow you or let you know that they know where you are. Somebody making physical threats or even harmful threats, whether verbally or actually threatening you in person, and having explicit images of them shared without their consent. Now, for our Muslim population, something that I talk about is like, you may send a picture without your hijab to a good friend of yours, and there are some scenarios that could happen. One, she could pull it up and maybe a male figure you didn't intend to see that picture walks by. Or two, maybe that friendship dissolves and she decides to be petty and share it. And we hope we don't know anybody like this, but these are things that you have to take into consideration, because once you share an image, you no longer have control of it. Whoever you send it to is now in control of your image. Additionally, anything you post online is there forever, you guys, forever. So I know you've probably heard there have been celebrities and people who have literally lost their jobs or have lost opportunities because of things they said as teenagers on social media, right? And so this stuff is forever. When you apply for jobs, high stake jobs, they will ask you, what is your handle? What platforms are you on? They want to make sure that you align with their principles, and they're going to see the things that other people may have on their profile of you. They're going to see all these things that you may not have ever intended for them to get out. So keep that in mind. Don't post things that you wouldn't want your mom or your dad to see. Don't post things that are controversial, because they may come back up later, So just kind of keep that in mind as well. So Aisha, this brings us to the question we talked about. There is a thing people are talking about, and it is social media anxiety disorder. Now, is it an official diagnosis? Not in our book yet. We work off of something called the DSM-5, and it has basically all of the counseling issues and all of the side effects. So the social media anxiety disorder is not in there to the best of my knowledge yet, but 20% of people feel anxiety if they don't check their social media once every 3 hours minimum. So I want you to I'm going to take a pause. Just think about, how often do you feel the need to check social media? And if you don't check social media, how are you feeling? So that's something to consider. All right, some of the side effects, or some of the symptoms, of this disorder that people have identified is that you stop to check a social media platform in the middle of a conversation. So kind of keep tally of how many of these you may experience. You spend at least 6 hours or more using social media daily. If your parents ask you, or someone asks you how often you're on there, you have to lie because it's a big number. You withdraw from family and friends, meaning that you're spending more time alone on social media than you would in a mixed family or friend setting. Failing in attempts to cut down or stop using social media. Neglecting or losing interest in school or work or favorite activities because you're so drawn to social media. And experiencing severe nervousness, anxiety, or withdrawal symptoms if you're not able to check it. Like if you go somewhere and there's no service, you're like, I have to leave. I need to get, service. I need to check. Or if for whatever reason, if you can't access social media, and you have an overwhelming desire to share things on your social media feed. So I'm going to take a break for a second and let you guys think about that. I wish I could see everybody. I would have asked for a show of hands from those who are comfortable, that if, did any of these surprise you? They surprised me. I really didn't know this was a disorder. But while y'all think about that, after what I've shared with you today, I do want to pose a question to everybody. And if you are a part of Stuco, you can unmute yourself and answer. If not, maybe we'll field some of the chat so people can put in the chat. But after what I've shared with you today, all the different aspects of mental health, what do you guys think it would be like to be a social media influencer? Because we know they're making a ton of money and it looks really glamorous to be on there. So I want your opinion. What do you think it would be like? And Asha, once those opinions start coming through, let me know. And Stuco girls, if you want to unmute.
Honestly, I feel like it's just like you said, yeah, and in the chat they're already saying it looks really nice and like flashy on the outside, but then knowing everything that you just talked about, there's always some issues going on within their personal life. There's no privacy that they have. They can't really like do what they want without worrying about, oh, what's the rest of the world going to think, because they have to put that on the internet. So
that's a great point, because we're on a much smaller scale. Like we're thinking, what are my friends and family going to think, or even just people in school, but they're thinking, what is the globe going to think? That's a great point, Salwa.
Someone had said very stressful and overwhelming, and can make people have a very low self-esteem.
Absolutely. That's true, because everyone is highlighting everything about you, and people have opinions, and it can be tough to deal with that.
I think there would also be a lot of pressure to maintain a perfect image as well. Like you would always have this pressure to show the world that you're perfect, but in reality you might be like behind the screen, you're not doing okay, for like those who show.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be harder to get assistance because what you've put out in the world is this happy image. And what would happen if you're not that happy image? People start to wonder, am I going to still be loved? Are people going to accept me if I'm having a hard time? I mean, it does put a bigger toll on your mental health. That's a really good point. Thank you, Alia. Any other comments?
I'd also like to add that also it puts a toll on your mental health, yes, but then just like the effect that it has on others who are seeing it, right? Like, oh, this person's so happy, but I'm not happy. Like, what is this like disconnect, like you mentioned, right? So then they also feel like this pressure to be happy, to have a better life that they think like their friend has, but their friend is also like doesn't have that life.
So Asma, let me let me see if I understand. You're saying that social media influencers are responsible for the way that other people view them as influencers as well as their own lives. So you're affecting like your own mental health and the mental health of others. Is that correct?
Kind of, yes, because when you're putting up that fake front, other people who look up to you are like, oh wow, this person's got this like amazing life. They've got like this BMW, they live in this like mansion. Why don't I have that type of a life, you know? And like, or when they just see like people happy and they're like, oh look, they're so happy. Why am I not happy like that? But it's not always like true happiness that's put up there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Esma actually went deep on us. She's mentioning the fact that we have a social responsibility as a community for each other's well-being. And if we're putting up a facade, we're hurting ourselves and others. That's a wonderful point. Thank you so much, Esma, for sharing that.
There's another point where somebody said they're literally depressed on the inside and feel they need to portray a fake version of themselves.
Right. Yeah. So much of this like facade that they're putting up because that's their persona and that's essentially what they're selling you, right? As the product and consumer, both the product for the platform and the consumer of influencers, you're not going to follow someone who's sitting there crying all the time or depressed. Like, what's the point of that, right? You want to see other things. And so they can't share who they are, what their experiences are. That's very true. I think someone may have talked about content, creating content. And I think that's very true as well. It's like, how much content can you really create and how often are people demanding it? Maybe you don't feel like creating content that week, but you have responsibility because it's your income. And so it's true. It can be challenging to, you know, kind of tie those together. Do we have any other comments, Aisha, before I?
Just to adding to your point, somebody said that their entire life becomes content. It also affects their family space. They can't just sit in a room and create content. It drags people around them in, and it may affect them too.
Yep, absolutely. Your life is not private anymore. So you can't just go out with your family and friends. People may stop you. People may stalk you, try and find out where you live. They may like be after your family. I see a hand. Rahmat.
Well, some types of, well, I'd like to point out that sometimes social media isn't always bad. And sometimes you don't even have to keep a perfect image because some social medias, like on YouTube or for gaming videos or something like that, it show more of a chill personality where you can really be real with people and they won't care as much as if you were like portraying one of the acts like the Kardashians did or something like that. Mm-hmm. It would be all different because sometimes some people have actually like positive communities that it doesn't matter if you're perfect or not, you're only human or something like that. And sometimes the anxiety, you can talk about it with some people online and it can really help.
That's a really good point. And so, yes, like I said, there are positive experiences on social media. I'm not sure, like, I don't really follow the gaming world, but I know that there are definitely people who do connect and do find positive experiences. So it's important to mention that because social media is not inherently evil. It depends on, you know, how we use it and what our experience is like. But like I said, the majority of people kind of are tied. So even if we think about these gamers, right, there's still a quota for content. There's still a demand for their attention. There's a demand for their exposure or transparency. So they do still experience the pressures of posting. They experience the pressures of developing content, lack of privacy. So you're right. It definitely is all about finding the right balance for you as an individual. Aisha, if you want to help me out, I thought I saw another hand, but I'm not sure.
I think, I don't think there's another.
All right. So then let's keep it going. All right. So like you guys have mentioned, overall, becoming an influencer, there are definitely some things that are challenges. So stuff that we've talked about, the demand of content, worried about followers, worried about the interactions. But we haven't also talked about, at some point it's not satisfying for them anymore, right? Maybe the platform doesn't become as popular. If you guys noticed, Facebook used to be the thing, and now aunties and mommies are on Facebook and everyone else is on other things, right? And so the content has to keep developing. You guys are at your time witnessed the shift between Instagram and TikTok, right? And so that's something else that influencers have to keep in contact or have to keep up with. They also have to, keep in mind that things are forever, like we talked about, not benefiting society necessarily, all those things. And so, yes, there are pros, definitely money, influence, social status, creating a community. But if you are thinking about becoming an influencer, think about it in a long term. Think about what you're actually contributing. What are you presenting to the world? Is it good for you? Something that we don't think about today is that if we take a principle like gossiping, back in the day, somebody would gossip to one person, but now these comments, they're consistently there and they're being shared and people don't have a time limit on it. So what you write on the internet definitely matters, and it's long-term, it's forever. And it has consequences that are forever as well. All right, so now we're thinking, all right, Bayanne has told me all these different things, and I need to know if I need help or if I'm normal or what's going on. So some of the things to keep in mind if we're talking about, how do I know if I need help? There was a lady who noticed that every time she would have a scroll session, she would put her phone down and feel really anxious. And she started to identify why she felt anxious. She ended up going to counseling, and I really liked what her counselor told her. She asked her to keep a journal. So they put a time limit. Maybe it would be like a week or 2 weeks, however long you want. And you would do about 15 minutes, or again, you can set the time, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, at the same time every day. And the reason why it would be at the same time is because sometimes other factors create anxiety or depression for us, and we wouldn't be able to isolate it. But if we did it every day at the same time, it may indicate more. And then basically after that session of scrolling, let's just say 15 minutes, then you would rate your emotion, like your emotional state, from 0 to 10, and 10 being really intense feelings. And you would want to understand and pinpoint, why are you feeling that way? What is triggering you? And sometimes we need help figuring that out. Sometimes that's where counselors or parents or other people come in. But this is just one method of kind of keeping track. The other thing is, maybe you're just generally concerned, like you already feel that you have maybe an unhealthy relationship with social media, or you've experienced any of the negative interactions, whether it's stalking or bullying or having somebody post something that you don't agree with. So those are all times to talk to somebody who you trust, an adult, a teacher, a parent, an aunt, an uncle, a counselor, whoever it is, and kind of get some guidance. And I will tell you, our parents didn't grow up in the age of technology. They may or may not understand how to help us, but it's definitely safer and better for us to talk with them and let them know what's going on. The other thing is there's a documentary called The Social Dilemma. And The Social Dilemma explains from the perspective of the people who actually created social media platforms, how the platforms work, what the algorithm does, what they're after, how they alter our behavior, our physiological responses, and they give tips. And so I thought it was interesting that they actually do a reboot. They encourage users to do a reboot. So for 1 week, what they would do is that they ask you to do a couple of things. So I think it's like 4 things. The first thing is create a scroll-free space for 30 minutes before bed and or after waking up. So if you're somebody who reaches for your phone the second your eyes open, maybe you dedicate 30 minutes of no scroll time. Maybe you just start your morning routine without your phone for 30 minutes and see how you start feeling at the end of the week. Same thing, 30 minutes before bed, you put your phone out, maybe you read a book, you read Quran, you say a dua or whatever, and then you go to sleep. The other thing is reclaiming your screen time connection. That means turning off unnecessary notifications. If you're somebody whose phone buzzes every time someone posts, someone likes your post, or you get a message or whatever, maybe that pulls you in a little bit too frequently. So maybe that's something to just go ahead and turn off. The other thing is disabling autoplay. So once you're, and this is pretty prevalent on like YouTube, right? If you go on YouTube, they have all these other videos that are suggested to you. Well, that's part of the algorithm. They're taking you down what we call a rabbit hole, right? From one thing to the next, and they have you spending so much time. They're learning more about you. They're tailoring the experience, and you're more likely to go back because they're tailoring it for you. And the last thing that I really, really liked was take care before I share, is what they're calling it. And you basically pause before sharing any content. You check the source if you're reposting to make sure that the information is actually real. And then you question your motive for posting. And I think that that's really a beneficial thing. If we think about our motive for posting before we post, I think we can have a totally different connection with our peers and a totally different online world. So that is the social dilemma tips and tricks in their reboot. Additionally, I think if you're somebody who wants to create that balance with social media in your life, something to think about is blocking harmful ads and unwanted ads. So you can actually go into your settings and have it where they don't track your data. Now you're still going to see ads, but it won't be tailored, right? And again, they even post it this way in the settings because fear of missing out, right? You're like, well, if I'm going to see ads, and maybe it should be tailored for me, but you can turn that off so that they're not constantly trying to pull you in with their algorithm. You can also create no social media zones or time with your family. So maybe you can say, if I'm in the living room, I'm going to keep my phone somewhere else so that I can actually spend time and be with my family, or, you know, whatever your version of that is. Another thing is you can choose to not have your phone in your bedroom at all at night, right? That limits your interaction. You're not having to wonder what's happening at night. And it gives you time to unplug. Lastly, or last two things are having a no selfie rule. So that means that you're not posting yourself on social media, and you're having to find other creative ways to express yourself and connect. But the way that this helps is it creates less of an impact on who you are and how you look on social media. So once you're interacting, you're not thinking like, I wonder if they're thinking I look good in this picture, or, you know, my nose is a little funky here, or my eye this, or, you know, and it takes that pressure off. And lastly, unfollow accounts that make you feel bad. I know that, you know, in a school setting, and especially in our communities, we feel like it's rude not to follow one another. But if you're noticing that somebody is posting too much for your liking, they're posting too much of something that makes you feel poorly, or, you know, for whatever reason, you can just choose to unfollow that person. And if you're like, this person is my cousin and I absolutely cannot, just mute them. So you're not seeing them on your news feed consistently. And that is what I have for you guys. I'd love to take questions and make this more interactive. Does anyone have anything, Aisha? Let me know if there's anything that's come through.
It was really insightful and much needed. We thank you on behalf of all of us. And I have a few over here, so I'll begin with the first few. So it's all general. So
Okay.
The first one is, with all the negative impact of social media, what is the substitute that I can offer to my kids?
Honestly, I think it's about, if your children are going to want to use social media, it's really hard to get them off of it completely, but you can offer a substitute of how they experience social media, limiting the time, limiting the types of profiles that they're following, encouraging them to have a talk with you about, you know, who they're following, what's happening. and understanding that, again, back to like maybe not posting selfies, things like that. So creating a more positive experience on social media is sometimes more realistic. If your children want to get off of social media altogether, then, but still want to be connected to technology, I would recommend maybe learning how technology works and impacting technology versus being a consumer of technology. So learning how to code, maybe taking fun classes, getting certificates in other ways, understanding how to develop software or make a website. So you're still involved in technology, but you're actually making the impact versus just mindlessly consuming.
Thank you. The next one is, sorry. If someone is cyber stalking you, what measures can you take to protect yourself?
If you're being cyber stalked, first of all, you need to let your family know. And then you and your family together need to either contact an authority. So, maybe use the non-emergency on the police number and ask them. It depends on how much has already happened, how much interaction has happened, and what the attempts have been. So I'm not sure about the legal aspects. I can't speak to that, but there may be, there may be that action that needs to be taken. You definitely want to if that person is within your school, you want to let your teachers and your principal know so that they can create distance for you, and you want to stay safe. So think about it from the perspective of staying safe, not letting that boundary get too close to your actual self, and authority, letting the right authorities know. But definitely don't put up with it. Don't stay quiet. Don't think that it's just going to go away. People who put the energy in cyber stalking typically have a motive. They want something. So.
Thank you. The next one is, if we communicate with friends through social media DMs, but we need a break, what do you advise is the best way to give ourselves space without getting away from friends if we don't want to communicate with them through other things or are unable to because it's not best for us?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So there's this like false expectation that we have to answer things as soon as we see them or as soon as they come up. So maybe if it's possible to take off the red receipt so that they're not aware that you've seen it, or just saying things like, thanks for this message, I'll get back to you doing something now or something, and create space. And that way you don't have to feel the pressure to respond so quickly. If you think about it, even on emails, we have like a 48-hour reply rate, right? You probably wouldn't freak out if someone didn't reply in 2 days. And it's not like they're actually in front of you where they're demanding an instant. Like if Aisha and I were talking right now, it'd be really weird if I was like, just give me some time. But on social media, that is a benefit. You can take time. So don't feel the pressure to respond. And if your friend is having a hard time understanding that you need space or time, then I would say that behavior is more about them than you. You don't have to make up that behavior. That's an expectation they're placing on you, and you don't necessarily have to meet that. Does that answer the question, Aisha? Is that satisfying as a teenager?
So thank you. I think we are done with there was another question about cyberbullying, or if they should just block them or ignore them, but I think you did answer that question with cyber stalking. So
yeah, and definitely blocking people is good, but again, take the opinion of the authorities, because it's really hard for me to generally answer this question. Like, depending on what's already transpired, it may be better to block them or it may not. So again, the authorities will let you know. Yeah. And it's a really unfortunate thing, but if you are being cyberbullied, I want you to know it's pretty common. Like, and it sucks to say that, but you're not alone. And there are definitely a lot of people who love you and care about you and want to make sure you're safe. So please talk to somebody.
But I think I don't see any more questions. I think,
Okay.
yeah. If you do have some time, somebody. Oh, okay. There's again one more. Because of coronavirus, would you prefer kids to have some social media to keep in touch with friends if they haven't started?
So for the person asking, like, your children don't have social media at all? Let's give them a second. Maybe they're still on and can give us more insight.
Oh, no. They're saying no, they don't.
So I think that that's an interesting thing because it depends on your child, how ready they are to be on social media. You know, how old they are really matters too, but understanding that everything they post is forever, knowing safety, understanding that, you know, you don't want to give people your full name, your location, trying to be as safe as possible. So, you know, does your child understand internet safety? Are you ready for them to be on social media platforms because their data is being tracked now, in a way to market to them, right? So those are some things to consider. The other thing to consider is how else can they be in touch with their friends? So, you know, let's talk more about the fear of missing out. Part of the fear of missing out and being on social media so much is because people think that if I'm not on social media, I'm not going to get invited. And that's partially true, right? Because sometimes it's just easier to connect to people on social media. But if you're making that choice to not be on social media or to step away from social media, then you kind of have to understand that, you know, people who want to maintain contact with you or people you want to maintain contact with will find alternative ways. Maybe you text, maybe you call, maybe you play a game together online, or, you know, whatever it is. So being on social media is a really big decision that, you know, parents and children have to make together, and it's a personal decision. And then again, you know, what are your rules for them using social media? What is your, you know, what's your time usage, consumption? All of those things are definitely things to consider. But I would say that's a super personal decision, and kind of take this information and some things to consider and as you make that choice.
So there's one more one person.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, we are accepting like one more last question. So
I'm not in a hurry. You're fine.
so say your friends got some stuff going on in their lives and they're trying to escape, and they're talking to people, including the person who wrote the question.
Mhm.
How do you not feel bad for leaving for a while? Like, I think they're talking
Okay.
about it's exhausting for them, so how do they take a break?
Well, I would say that sometimes we're not, it's a big ask to put the toll of our mental health on other people our age, right? It can be really exhausting because we may not know the right thing to say. We have to handle our own mental health, right? Something that people don't realize is that even as a counselor, sometimes we see other counselors, right? Because we have to manage our personal mental health and the mental health of others. So in your situation, if you're having a friend that's going through a really difficult time, but it's putting a toll on you, one is you're still a good friend, so don't let that make you feel bad. Two, kind of guide them in the right direction for resources. So, you know, depending on what your friend's going through, suggest to them, like, well, have you talked to so-and-so adult? Have you talked to your mom? Have you talked to your teacher? Have you talked to our principal? Have you talked to somebody? So that way, somebody who may have more answers or more resources can step in and help them, and they're still getting the help they need. Because sometimes, while it's amazing for our friends to vent to us, they need serious intervention, right? And it's a big responsibility for us to figure out, do they need intervention or not? The other thing is, you know, they can talk to a counselor. So for example, through NCCHS, we offer counseling services. And the way counseling works is that, you know, people come in, they bring in kind of their situation, what's happening, and we talk through it. So they're able to have the space to reflect and to think and to explore their own thoughts in what's going on. And that may be more beneficial to them than you trying to figure out the best thing to say and and you being stressed out about it. And what I'm hearing from you is like you're overwhelmed and you need space, but you're putting that other person ahead of you and you're sacrificing to make sure they're okay. And while that's really lovely as a friend, it takes a toll on you and now you need support. So I think it would be best for you to encourage them to talk to an adult. And if they don't want to, and you feel it's a serious thing, they're putting, they're at harm, they may harm somebody else, somebody's harmed them, whatever is going on, then you find somebody responsible and you share with them and tell them what's going on.
Okay, I have one more.
Sure.
I talked a lot about why to try to stay away from social media, but what if it's like a way to get away from everything that's happening in our personal life, like things happening at home and we just have struggles in life in general? What are some other ways that can have a positive impact as well as like other than social media?
So, absolutely. I definitely understand, and I'm guilty too. There are definitely days where I'm just having a bad day and social media is like a nice refresher. There's a funny video or something, but it can't always be our go-to because again, it can re-trigger us because depending on what is being shared. So I appreciate you wanting variety. Some things that people do when they're stressed out other than social media would be to take a walk, talk to a friend, get a workout in, bake something, cook something, do something different that, basically engage in a hobby. You can keep a journal, journal your thoughts, your feelings, like what happened today, how I'm feeling about it, what my thoughts were, things like that. Sometimes people will tell me like, man, I don't want anyone to find my journal. And I'm like, okay, well, just write it down. And when you're done, tear it out and cut it all up and flush it down the toilet or, throw it in the trash. Sometimes just putting it into words and having that space makes us feel better. So those are a couple of things that may help. I did say vent to a friend, and I just want to again reiterate someone you trust because, some people are better at keeping things confidential than others. And again, if there's a lot going on, talk to a trusted adult, consider going to counseling. At NCCHS, we do offer counseling, but if you're under 18, we would want your parent to know that you're going to counseling and sign consent forms. So the way that somebody could have that conversation would be to say, mom, this is happening and I'm feeling like this. Would you support me in going to counseling? Like, can I talk to somebody? And I will say sometimes our parents don't understand counseling and you can explain to them, what it's like or what you think you're going to get out of it.
There's a few more. So one of it, what is the good age to let them decide their time limit? And should parents have a time limit on their social media usage time?
That really depends, right? It depends on what your child is consuming and for how long and what their balance is like. So some people are naturally not that involved in social media. They may get home, scroll for a little bit, maybe 30, 40 minutes, whatever, and the rest of their day, they're doing other things. Or you may notice that your child is 100% consumed in social media. They're not motivated to do schoolwork. They're not motivated to spend time with family, friends, other things. So there are some signals like that that may warrant for you to start trying to put a time limit. But each family really sets that for themselves, depending on their lifestyle, what social media is being used for. Again, how is your child feeling after getting off of social media? Are they feeling better? Are they feeling worse? Sometimes this way, sometimes that way. So I think those are conversations to definitely have openly with our children, asking them, what is the social media experience like for you? What do you enjoy doing on there? Who do you communicate with? What type of accounts do you like to follow? What things do you aspire to put on there? And those are some questions that kind of get the conversation rolling so you can make a more informed decision on time and consumption.
Somebody asked, is therapy a good option? And another question was, can you provide contact info for MCHHS that you were mentioning?
Yes. So let me see. Am I able to access the chat? I wonder.
I think you should be.
Yeah, I think I can. Okay. So if you give me a second, at the end, I will post MCCHS's website, and you can go through there, give us a call, and we will do like an intake, talk to your family. And is therapy a good idea? I mean, I'm biased. I'm spending so much of my life to become a therapist. So my initial answer is yes. Not everyone goes to therapy for a specific issue. Sometimes people go to like explore certain things, certain goals, certain thoughts, feelings, whatever. I think it's positive. It's important that you like your therapist, that you trust them, that you align with what they're telling you. It happens where, you get into a session with somebody and you don't feel like it's a good fit, you're not comfortable sharing, or maybe you don't see eye to eye with a therapist, and that it happens. It's totally okay. At that point, I would say, find somebody else. Don't keep going to therapy if you don't like your therapist.
Are you okay with continuing, or we could stop?
Yeah, I have about another 10 minutes or so.
So I have maybe I'll take two more questions. I think I have one already. So I have two questions here. So I think we will close the Q&A with these two. So is it just with social media, or do you believe that it's much broader, including other apps that aren't always used to connect with others, like for example, YouTube?
So YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. What else am I missing? Those are all technically social media, right? Because there's a lot of times where like snippets of this content is here, and that's done on purpose to get you to like engage with multiple platforms for the person. But YouTube definitely has that same aspect, because you're watching people, you're still comparing, there's that loophole for the algorithm. They're just suggesting more and more videos. And let's face it, 5 minutes on YouTube ends up being like an hour, So I would include Facebook as a YouTube as a platform. But again, it depends, right? Because there's really good uses to YouTube. Like, for example, learning how to make something, or do something or accomplish something. And so again, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that all usage in social media is negative or it should be avoided. I'm just saying we need to strike a good balance for our mental health, and really understand the purpose of what we're doing, the intention behind our own usage and what we post, as well as the effects of it on us.
Okay, so the last and final question is that what is one final advice you would like us to know and implement in our lives?
Ooh, that's heavy. I would say that my advice to you is to, I think at your age, like as a teenager, I would definitely look for opportunities and experiences that make your life richer and provide you with more opportunities in the future. So if you think about the amount of time, if like when I was a teenager, I spent a lot of time on social media. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It was new. I wanted to, explore it. But actually, I'll say this: when social media first started, we didn't spend a lot of time on it because it didn't have a lot of features. But as the features grew, we spent a lot more time. And if I'm being honest, the best advice I would give you is to look at ways where you can make an impact and better yourself. So, like I said, learn how to use the internet in a positive way, learn to code, learn to make websites. If it's not your thing, figure out what you like and spend time with your hobbies, with your passion, and with your family, because those are things that are fleeting, right? We only have so much time in our lives. Not so much of it should go to like mindless scrolling and just pure entertainment. I think my advice would be to think about what you want long term. Think about, how what you're doing affects that positively or negatively, and make your choices that way. I did have a second to put the website online. And so if you look at the website, you can see all of our different programming. We have a couple of things for the parents. We do, in teens alike, we do a Teens and Technology live talk every Saturday at 10. And it should also give you the phone number to call for counseling.
Before I pass the mic on to Salah, I would like to thank you so much for this amazing talk. It was so insightful, so much to learn. I was like literally checking boxes off. So thank you. But if anybody wants to rewatch this session, it is on our Qalam Collegiate Academy official website. Please go on there and check it out. And it would be really nice if we could see you more often on your availability and come and talk to our younger grades in QCA. It would mean a lot to us. And thank you again. And yeah, have a great day.
Jazakallah khair, Aisha. And really everybody, thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed talking with you guys and look forward to more interactions with you guys in the future.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Bayanne, for being so open about the topic. It really helped us understand, the dangers of social media and how we can use it effectively and stuff. The tips that you gave were really helpful, and obviously they were really relevant to teens our age. And I want to thank you all for spending your Sunday evening with us here, with us QCA girls, and Jazakallah khair to MCCHS for helping us organize this event, and to YM, to Young Muslim Sisters of Dallas as well.
Jazakallah khair, Salwa, and everybody for attending. I really appreciate this. And I want to thank your school administration and definitely your principal and teachers for putting this together and, really caring about you guys enough to, well, I know they care about you, but just, over and beyond, to be here on a weekend and to really care about your mental health. And so I'm so happy to know that that exists. So Jazakallah khairan, and I appreciate you guys having me.
Jazakumullahu khairan, Sr Bayanne. And from all of us here at QCA, really thank you again. And we are going to have you back with us again soon. Just expect a call, inshallah. Amazing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the age you are in, you have your years beyond. I mean, I know you are studying, you're in this field, but to talk with the wisdom that you did, I'm so impressed. You really touched my heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only grow you, and inshallah, like I said, we are going to bring you back, inshallah.
Thank you guys so much. I'm so humbled. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the Ramadan dua.
Absolutely. And wonderful iftar, everyone, here at QCA. Jazakumullahu khair, everyone. Is the stream off? Let me just check. Hold on.